So we have an in vivo question regarding how do we go about doing an apology skillfully? And well, earlier today we were talking about how, by God, it's humbling that we don't actually know how these things work. Um, Show of hands for people that were ever taught this before. No, no, okay. Yeah. Um, I only learned this skill very recently, probably the past couple of years. And boy, it's humbling. So maybe we can discuss the importance of an apology first. And we can do that with the question of what is an apology for? To get a better sense that we can look at the context in which an apology is warranted, in which an apology might be occasioned. And the context, generally speaking, it's when we've encountered a rupture in a relationship that we would like to repair. And so we'll kind of get a signal of this. We've talked in the past about emotional experience letting us know what matters and what way it matters, to what degree it matters. We will generally feel the need for an apology when we have a sense of, call it a sense of guilt, which is a bit, gets conflated with shame quite often. They both have that kind of experience. Shame is a bit more like there's something wrong with me, what I am. Guilt is a bit more like there's something wrong with my actions, what I've done. And generally, an apology is occasioned by the experience of guilt. We have some sense that we have done wrong or have harmed a person whom we care about. So that's another good signal value there, too. Generally, an apology is occasioned to varying intensities of love, positive feeling, whatever the case is, the warm and fuzzies that we feel towards somebody. Guilt is a tough one, and it takes something extra quite often to actually motivate us out of what might be a kind of shame spiral. And let's say that what might motivate us to offer an apology is something like the image, the idea of what the relationship could be were it to be repaired. So, in the aftermath of a rupture, wherein we discover that the closeness we felt prior is actually maybe more distant than we had thought, or it has become more distant, and we're looking to regain a sense of closeness. Something in our emotional experience lets us know that this new distance that we've either discovered or we've created, something about this is intolerable. We would prefer to have maybe not fully, meshed together, but we'd prefer closeness rather than this distance. So our emotions are going to let us know when an apology is a good thing. And again, generally it's that we have a beautiful image of what the relationship could be. We imagine that we would be sad. Maybe we feel sad over having lost the relationship that we had prior. That too could be a really potent signal. So, anyway, all this to say, the context in which an apology is warranted is in the case of a rupture, wherein there is distance created between two parties, where one of them would like the closeness. Now, the hard thing about an apology uh, is that it's very humbling. We're essentially saying to the other, um, boy, I messed up. And I value this relationship more than I value, call it my independence. So I am going to put myself under in a way, and effectively ask you on what terms this relationship can persist. Now, if the gravity of that move escapes you, oof, it's really worth taking a moment to pause and think through the ramifications. I mean, a good apology, depending on how much emotional intimacy is involved in the relationship, depending on the intensity of feelings involved, like, boy, you may be in a very humbled position when offering an apology. Little different than, like, I bump into somebody on the street and go, "Oh, sorry." I, we're probably not talking about that kind of apology. We're talking about an apology with some gravitas, let's say. So I think an apology has a few key components to it. One is an acknowledgement of the other person's perception of wrong. If we're going to apologize well, whether we entirely believe like 100% of the other person's experience or not, we've got to acknowledge it, which could be something as simple as, I'd like to offer you an apology. And notice even the difference in that phrase. Rather than sorry for this, I'd like to offer an apology. I am making an offering, and let's not lose the religious connotations of something like that. I'm going to get chills even as I say that because I think there's something to it. I am putting an offering on the altar of the sacred. The sacred being something like whatever weaves us together and makes relationships possible in the first place. I am going to offer myself. That's a scary thing. Again, I hope the gravity of this isn't lost on us, but I'd like to offer you an apology for whatever it is, for having hurt you when I said your face looks stupid and punchable. Um, I would like to offer an apology for uh, having disrespected you. I would like to offer an apology for whatever the case is. If you're not sure what you're apologizing for, you can't really offer an apology. Now, you could say, maybe this is prior to it, you could say, I I seem to have upset you. I think I've upset you somehow, and I don't quite know what I did. Can you help me understand what I did that upset you, that hurt you, that whatevered you, that annoyed you, that infuriated you, that grievously wounded you? Can you help me understand? Because part of the apology is it's a naming of the actions taken that resulted in the harm so that they know you know what you've done. That's important. If they don't know that you know what you've done, they're still in an anxiety laden position. Well, okay, you said sorry. Do you really know what you said sorry for? Do you know what you're sorry about? Uh, Maybe you're just sorry because you can't handle any distance in a relationship. And boy, don't we know that people just say like cheap sorries to smooth over difficulties? Like, oh, sorry. It's okay. Too casual. If there's a genuine rupture in a relationship, casual's not going to cut it. A good apology will make the relationship stronger than it was before the rupture. And that is a really important thing. We go through experiences of rupture and repair all the time. Well, I shouldn't say that. Some of us, we just rupture and rupture and rupture, and we leave a trail of devastation in our past. Uh, Hopefully, we learn to repair at some point. Hopefully, this skill can add to that. So, we had an example the other week, and we won't go into the specifics of it, but I offered an apology. And I said, boy, in that encounter the other year, in hindsight, sorry, I'm going to get emotional even as I say it now. In hindsight, I think I really mishandled that situation. And I know that that led to a whole lot of emotional turmoil for you. And I know that that's impacted the quality of our relationship now. And I feel terribly about that. So there's a way we can identify what we have done and the effect, intentional or otherwise, on the other person for what we have done. Those are two big ingredients. There's taking accountability of one's actions, and there's acknowledging the effect of those actions on the other. Because actions aren't just actions, actions have signal value. Actions communicate something about how we perceive the relationship as such. So, kind of a rolling recap, I might say. Boy, I'd like to offer you an apology. When I did this, it did that. Or when I said this, I know it hurt you. When I did that, I know it was upsetting to you. When I did whatever I did, it had this effect on you. And so I'd like to offer you an apology. And if we want to do one better, we can say, and I'd like to ask your forgiveness. And there we can get a sense of the kind of reciprocity of an apology. An apology may be offered, and that goes a long way in and of itself. Uh, the other person is under no obligation to accept our apology. It may be the case that, boy, we value the relationship more than they do now. Maybe we have revealed something about who we are and how we are through that action, where the person doesn't care to accept our apology, which, boy, is devastating. It happens sometimes. But a good apology, it's so rare that most people, they will be very surprised when we do this well. Most people that I've met, at least, haven't really had a good example of an apology before. And so when they're offered one, it's it, it's disarming, it's surprising, it's disorienting. So I'd like to offer you an apology. When I did this, it impacted you, it affected you this way, it produced this. And frankly, the state of affairs now, it's not tolerable for me. It's not what I would want for us. And I'd like to ask your forgiveness. Now, let's say the other person accepts it. If they accept it, we thank them, because that matters. When, again, if we take into mind like the religious connotations of this, if we keep in mind the experience of the sacred in back of all of this, we have Through our actions, we have ripped the fabric of being. If this sounds hyperbolic, uh, tough shit. I mean, this is like, I really do think this is the gravity of what we're doing when we apologize. We, through our actions, say we have ripped the fabric of the sacred that holds things together in relationship. In offering an apology, we are at the altar on our knees asking for things to be brought back together. And when a person accepts our apology, when a person knows that we know what we've done and the effects of what we've done, and our good faith desire to make reparations for that, to repair this rent fabric, and they accept that, boy, I don't know if you know how good it would have been to get kicked out of the Garden of Eden and then invited back into the Garden of Eden. But by God, if someone accepts your apology, you've just been invited back in. You have had your fall from grace, and you've been given another chance. Thank the other person for giving you another chance. Thank the other person for for the grace of God that has come through them to you. Maybe it seems like a small detail. I don't think it's a small detail. I think really like a conscious acknowledgement of, boy, you have, man, apologies get me, I guess. I'm really emotional talking about it. When someone accepts an apology that we've offered genuinely, they have given us such a gift. They've given us such a gift because they're under no obligation to welcome us back into the kingdom. No obligation. So for them to give us another chance, that I really do think is an example of something close to divine grace. So we can thank them. If we want to take it one step better, I mean, we're getting the basic model here. If we want the upgrade, let's thank them. If we want the upgrade to the upgrade, we can ask, what do you need from me in order for this to, whatever the case is, to, we can say, uh, we can say any number of things that basically say, by God, what has happened? I'm going to do my level best to ensure that never happens again. Sometimes that's obvious in their knowing that we know what we've done and its effect. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not obvious. So we could take it a step further and say, this that happened in that context, I promise you it's not going to happen again. And I don't know how long it'll take to earn back your trust. I don't know what it will take to earn back your trust. If anything, by God, you would give me such a gift in teaching me what it would take to earn back your trust. Whatever the case is, I am committed to this relationship persisting and developing and growing, improving all this time. Because an apology with no change in behavior, you've profaned the sacred. If your actions demonstrate that your word in an apology is empty, oof, that that you really missed the mark on that one. Uh, in which case, I I don't know. I don't want to imagine how difficult it is to apologize for giving a shit apology before. Like, oof, that is you probably only get one do-over on that before it's just like you anything you say is garbage. not garbage. Hard to trust. Uh, Maybe that's where you get the colloquialism, the fool me once, the fool me once, shame on. However it goes, I think we know the phrase. I don't clearly know the phrase, but I think we get it. There's some folk wisdom in that. If you have to apologize for offering a terrible apology or for breaking the the covenant, the agreement of the apology, oof, I don't think you get to do that over again. I could be wrong. Um, some people are more than willing to tolerate really terrible behavior for a long period of time, but those aren't going to be very fulfilling relationships, I would suggest. So, anyway, all this to say, if we want to, hoping it applies only once one knows the code. Yeah, I think only once you know the code, then the rules apply. If you don't know the code, forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. Uh, Tragic in and of itself that we don't know what we're doing. Um, but yeah, I think maybe that only apply. Let's say from here on out, from here on out, you only get really one, maybe two, if you're lucky, chances to give a good apology. But anyway. So if we want to sum all of this up again, and then we can chat a bit. Uh, I think it's worth being explicit. The distinction between sorry for whatever, even even no matter no matter what follows there, sorry isn't an action. I'm sorry for that. I bet you are. Okay, what action will you take as a result of that? Oh, yeah, okay. I'd like to offer you an apology. That is an action. That's a little different than sorry for that. You could say, I feel sorry for that. And I would like to offer you an apology. When I did this, the when then link, man, it's golden. When I did this, then it hurt you. When I did this, then it upset you. When I did this, you were disappointed. And I'd like to ask your forgiveness. So you make an offering and you lead with the offering. You don't jump to forgiveness. Forgive me for having done. No, 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 no. If you're offering an apology, you've ripped the fabric. So you offer and you ask, I'm like to offer you an apology. When I did this, it had that effect. And I'd like to ask your forgiveness. Let's say that's the basic. If they in turn offer you forgiveness, which is their offering to the sacred, let's keep in mind the sacred takes two. So when they offer forgiveness, thank them. By God, thank the person. It is so easy. It is easy to overlook it, and yet I I think it does something important. It closes an important loop there. Um, this might seem extraneous, but if you're on the receiving end of that, uh, you could say you're welcome when someone thanks you. Again, this might seem trivial. It's amazing what that little detail will do to say you're welcome when someone offers thanks, because thanks is an offering as well. You can see that this offering and offering, and you'll note two offerings are made by the person who has done wrong. There's the offering of an apology, the asking for forgiveness, and the offering of thanks. Something about that feels right to me. I don't know about you. Something about that. I'm going to offer you this on one hand. I'm going to ask for something. I'm going to offer this to you as well. I like that. I think there's something really, really important about that. And then whether it's made explicit or not, the important aftermath of this is that your behavior better signal that a change actually has occurred. Now, if you've gone through all of this process of really offering the good apology, I'm willing to bet your emotional state isn't going to let stupid happen again. It, probably not. You're going to be dialed in a very different way. Because again, a good apology humbles you. You come back down to the ground, sometimes with a thud, and your actions will likely be different, most likely. But let's say it's important to have a conscious awareness that, by God, they better be different. Because again, if they are not different, after you've gone through the sacred practice of offering an apology, you've profaned the sacred. And you better pray to whatever God you give prayers to at that point that you get a second chance, because you likely won't get a third. So there's some thoughts on apologies. Let me pause there and we'll see where we get to. So we were discussing some of the value of an apology in how deeply personal it is, in that it involves the person of the other. And I suggested that part of what makes this art of apology so powerful, so significant, um, the reason why I kind of made it a suggestion that it's the most powerful thing, that has to do with how James Hillman describes soul in his book Revisioning Psychology. So I'll read a paragraph, if I may, and we'll see what bearing this has on an apology. Soul. I suggested that the word refers to the page number. This is in the introduction. Oh, you've got a copy there with you. Great. So it's the Roman numeral XVI, page 16 of the introduction. There's a bottom paragraph on that page. So I suggested, oh yeah, you got it. Perfect. Oh, you got it underlined too. So now everybody has to get a copy, Revisioning Psychology by James Hillman. Uh, so I suggested that the word refers to that unknown component which makes meaning possible. And if I may pause us here and take apart that word meaning, Gregory Bateson, elsewhere in a book called Steps to an Ecology of Mind, he says we can consider meaning roughly synonymous with information, with pattern, with redundancy. Meaning is how the world coheres. It lets us know it. I think the information parallel is the key word there. Meaning informs us. And go ahead and put a dash between in and form there. Meaning is how things form. So soul makes meaning possible. Soul turns events into experiences. If we take a look at what this means for an apology, we're speaking with soul, we're speaking to soul in an apology. It's not accidental that I brought in the idea of the sacred before with an apology. When we're offering an apology and we're doing it well, we acknowledge the experience of the other in the midst of those events. So I acknowledge the event, which perhaps I precipitated, and the other's experience of that event. So soul turns events into experiences. Soul, yeah, not just letting you know that I did something wrong. It's not just a mea culpa. It's, by God, this is what you experienced in that event. Soul is communicated in love. And I mentioned earlier that a genuine apology is most often motivated not necessarily by guilt. Guilt is a part of it, But guilt is a little more cognitive. Guilt says, ooh, what is shouldn't be. What I did, I shouldn't have done. Reality ought to be other than what reality is. What motivates a good apology is love. Love being something like whatever it is that connects us to anything. Love being, in the technical psychoanalytic term, being like a cathexis. I'm investing my emotional energy in this object. But psychoanalytic language is so dry and dead. Love, we get better. So it's communicated in love. And soul has a religious concern. It won't be lost on you that before I was referring to the offering at the altar of the sacred. Religious, by the way, the word religion, interestingly, etymologically derives from a root meaning to yoke. So the religious concern, let's say, the soul aspect of an apology is, by God, I want us to be yoked together in this relationship and yoked to the sacred, yoked to God, yoked to something, to whatever it is that arises between us. So, these four qualifications I had already put forth some years ago. He's referring to a book called Suicide and the Soul. I had begun to use the term freely, usually interchangeably with psyche from Greek and anima from Latin. Now I am adding three necessary modifications. So says Hillman. First, soul refers to the deepening of events into experiences. Soul's direction is downward. I mentioned earlier, I believe, the gravity of an apology. We are acknowledging the depth of what another person experienced in the midst of those events. And boy, if there's one thing we so often shy away from, it is the depth of another person's experience, let alone our own. We're often skirting across the surface of things. What difference does this make? Well, does anybody want a superficial apology? Some shallow acknowledgement of their experience? No, we want depth. And a good apology, boy, it opens up it opens up, it makes possible such a depth of relationship. Anyone who has undergone or partaken in the process of a good apology, they know that something's different after than it was before. It is not the same, and that's important. An apology isn't offered to get us back to where we were. An apology is offered forward. It makes possible something that wasn't before. And I believe that something involves depth, the gravity of the relationship, the acknowledgement of the weight of this relationship. Second, the significance soul makes possible, whether in love or in religious concern, derives from its special relation with death. Now, I am just improvising a bit here as I say this, but I mentioned before that you maybe only get a second chance to offer the apology. After that, the relationship is probably dead. And quite frankly, if we've wronged the other and not offered a good apology, the relationship is dying. It is on its way toward death. And tragically, we probably all have so many examples of that where we had hoped for an apology from some other, and when it was not offered, when it was not forthcoming, resentment builds quite often. I mean, look back at any romantic relationship where there's been a big fight and there's not been Any who's had an experience where you've been in a relationship, someone's offered an apology, like by God, how different history could have been, but oh, here we are now, and we make the best of it. Anyway, we've all had relationships that have died for want of a good apology. And oh, I'm sure we can painfully imagine how differently things could have been had a good apology been there. It is life-saving, an apology. So anyway, maybe that's the special relationship with death that we're talking about. Maybe that's what brings in this soulful aspect of an apology. And third, and I promise I'll shut up with James here. Well, I can't promise. He's great. And third, by soul, I mean the imaginative possibility in our natures, the experiencing through reflective speculation, dream, image, and fantasy, that mode which recognizes all realities as primarily symbolic or metaphorical. So if I improvise a bit here, I would take that to mean something like, I suggested that part of what motivates our offering of an apology is an image of what the relationship could be. That is fantasy. That is something we imagine. That is an idea. It is a psychic reality that we are hoping to make concrete, that we are hoping to make tangible. I have an idea of how this was, an idea of how this could be, and I am attempting to realize some vision of what this relationship could be in the offering of an apology. Now, I can't quite remember how we got on Hillman. We were talking about the personal experience of the other person, the acknowledgement of that amidst the events. Yeah. And then, well, I just decided it might be of value to just bring in all sorts of ideas about soul and why an apology is so sacred and why I cry, I tear up, I overflow and outpour when I encounter a good apology. Um, it is a way to make soul. Is it a way? It's a way to deliberately invite depth into the relationship. And it is an offering. And I'll die on that hill that it's an offering at the altar of the sacred. Something about that feels really right to me. So, anyway, there's James Hillman.